In 1993, a small event was held in a car park arena in Denver, Colorado. It was watched by a few thousand people in the building and 86,000 pay-per-view buyers at home. Today, the UFC behind that event is worth an estimated $12 billion. This is the story of how the UFC was created and how a single crazy idea changed combat sport forever. The idea started with a simple question. What happens when two fighters from different martial arts fight each other with no rules? Does the boxer beat the wrestler? Does the karateka beat the judoka? For decades, practitioners of different martial arts argued about this endlessly, but nobody had tested it under controlled live conditions. The man who decided to finally find out was Rorion Gracie. Rorion was a member of the Gracie family, a Brazilian fighting dynasty that had been developing their own style of martial art for decades. That style was BJJ, or BJJ. BJJ focused almost entirely on ground fighting, taking opponents down and submitting them with joint locks and chokes. The Gracies believed BJJ was the most effective martial art in the world. But they had a problem. Nobody outside Brazil had heard of them or their style. Rorion had moved to the U.S. in the 1970s and was teaching BJJ out of his garage. He needed a way to show the world what his family's art could do. The answer came through a business partner named Art Davey. Davey was a marketing professional with a background in advertising. Together, they came up with the concept for a tournament they called the UFC. The original concept was simple. 8 fighters from 8 different martial arts, 1 tournament, no rules. No weight classes, no time limits, no judges. To win, fighters had to make your opponent give up or be unable to continue. They needed a venue to house the event. They also needed a broadcaster willing to take a chance on something nobody had seen before. They found their answer in a pay-per-view network called Semaphore Entertainment Group. The event was scheduled for November 12, 1993, in Denver, Colorado. Now they needed fighters. Rorion entered his brother Royce Gracie to represent BJJ. Royce was not the biggest Gracie or the strongest. He was chosen because his size would make the victories more impressive. If a smaller man could beat everyone using technique alone, the message would be undeniable. The other 7 slots were filled with a boxer, a wrestler, a kickboxer, a sumo wrestler, a savate practitioner, a shoot fighter, and a Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock was already a seasoned professional fighting competitor who became a sport's first stars. The arena was the McNichols Sports Arena. Inside, they built an octagonal cage to house the fights. The octagon was specifically designed so there were no corners for fighters to get trapped in. It became a most recognizable symbols in all of sport. On fight night, the atmosphere was unlike anything audiences had seen before. There were no ring girls, no elaborate entrances, no commentary team explaining what was happening. Just 2 fighters, a referee, and a cage. Royce Gracie's first opponent was a boxer named Art Jimerson. Jimerson famously wore only 1 boxing glove, unsure what to do with the other hand. It became a symbol of how unprepared traditional martial artists were for this format. Royce took Jimerson down, mounted him, and Jimerson tapped out before a single punch was thrown. The crowd did not know how to react. They had never seen a fight end that way. Royce's second opponent was Ken Shamrock. Shamrock was larger, stronger, and more experienced in cross-discipline fighting. Royce submitted him with a rear naked choke in just over a minute. The crowd could not believe what they were watching. A smaller man had just submitted a much larger, stronger opponent using technique alone. In the final, Royce fought a kickboxer named Gerard Gordeau. Gordeau had brutally knocked out his previous opponent and was considered dangerous. Royce submitted him in under 2 minutes. Royce Gracie had won all 3 of his fights in one night and became the UFC's first champion. The message the Gracies wanted to send had been delivered with perfect clarity. BJJ, specifically ground fighting and submission grappling, was devastatingly effective against striking arts. The event caused enormous controversy in the U.S. Politicians called it human cockfighting. Senator John McCain became the most vocal critic and pushed for the sport to be banned. McCain sent letters to all 50 U.S. state governors urging them to ban the sport. 36 states banned UFC events from their territories. Pay-per-view carriers dropped the UFC from their platforms. The UFC was losing money rapidly. Rorion Gracie sold his stake in the UFC in 1995 and moved on. The UFC changed hands several times and nearly collapsed entirely. In 2001, the UFC was purchased for $2 million by a casino businessman named Lorenzo Fertitta and his brother Frank. They brought in a promoter named Dana White, and the rest is history.